look, come to think of it, well, I got to look at this myself. Wow. What a view.
In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Thursday, the 28th of May, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and government. You know, beyond the questions of taking our jobs, the real danger is, will it be used to audit us and to automate war? So how do we stop that? Can government be used to control it for safety? Well, the reality is that the government is the one that is pushing for this. So we have a real dilemma here. Reason has a very thoughtful analysis of this and a lot of quotes from people involved in the issue on both sides. We're going to take a look at that. We're also going to be joined by Tony Arterburn today to talk about what is happening economically. What is ahead for gold and silver, and more importantly, is a depression ahead of us. We'll be right back. Well, I want to begin with a very interesting bit of research that was published by the Daily Caller. It turns out that Trump's polling organization, the Fabrizio is the guy's name, his organization, Tony Fabrizio. You may recall that name. It does sound familiar. I'd never paid much attention to what he does, but he is the go-to guy for the White House polling. And we need to understand that polls can be used one or two ways. It can be used to find out what people want. It can also be used to try to manipulate people. They call that a push poll. Well, it turns out they did one poll to try to find out what people wanted, and then they didn't like that. And so then they put out a push poll. Daily Caller has now found the original poll, and it is light years away from what the Trump administration is pushing on people. Pushing on people because of the same type of things that we see with war and Israel. It's the big pharma industry that really controls the White House, Capitol Hill, and the media, just like the Zionists do as well. And they do not have our interests in mind. And this is not something that has just recently happened with the Trump administration. Daily Caller looking at this thinks, well, you know, they had these polls that were done, and RFK Jr. commissioned this poll, the Maha Coalition or whatever. They commissioned this, and then there are people in the White House who say, oh, wait a minute, we don't like that. Let's have another poll. They asked different questions, couched them in a way that showed support for Big Pharma. And you need to understand, on the very first day of the Trump administration, you could see that he was right back to where he left off. You know, we had the Stargate announcement where he's there with a billionaire, Larry Ellison, and some bankers and other things like that. What was he pushing? mRNA. He's pushing mRNA designed for you by artificial intelligence, bringing in these two currents of harmful dominating technologies, combining them together to make money with a billionaire and a banker and so forth. And that is really what Trump is about. He's not really vacillating. He's just changing the message that he gives you, just like he changed this poll. So a senior investigative reporter with Daily Caller, Emily Kopp, found an unreleased poll that appears to undermine the White House's stated rationale for pivoting away from policies that inflame pharmaceutical companies. The Daily Caller obtained a secret poll that was conducted in October by Trump's own pollster, Tony Fabrizio, and it found that 73% of voters expressed concern about childhood vaccine mandates. It's kind of interesting. The vast majority of people that they polled, the vast majority of them, didn't like the mandates, were not trusting of safety, and they really hated the fact that the pharmaceutical industries have been given total legal immunity for the harm that they do to people. It's like kind of interesting. We look at this and we're supposed to believe that you and I are the only ones who are concerned about this. No, it's the vast majority of Americans, and it is bipartisan, quite frankly. They always want to put everything into a partisan spin. It's like, well, okay, you don't like this stuff, but don't let those other guys and the other tribe get this, because then they're really going to ram it down your throat. No, they don't like it either. This is just people being controlled. They use polls to control you. They use elections to control you as well. Somebody asks, so what's the purpose of elections if it's all rigged? And it's like, the purpose of the elections is to control you, like everything they do. Whether you're talking about media or whether you're talking about schools or whether you're talking about social media, it's all there to control you, to manufacture your consent, especially to form you into tribes. That's one of the most controlling things that they can do. And it's something that Trump excels at more than anybody, to break people into competing factions and tribes. So 73% of people expressed concern about childhood vaccine mandates. 90% of voters had concerns about the pharmaceutical industry's corrupting influence. Yeah, we don't like these giant corporate industries that control public opinion and control public officials. We don't like it when Israel does it. We don't like it when a large industry like Big Pharma does it either. The October poll was never released, however. Instead, the White House commissioned a different poll. Let's try that again. It's kind of the same thing the pharmaceutical companies do when they're, quote unquote, testing their drugs, right? And, you can always look at a test that way. Typically, we think about tests that we take in school, and, we look at that and it's like it's to evaluate. The teacher wants to know what you know. I used to tell the kids when we were giving them tests, I said, this is so you understand what you know and what you don't know. It's to put you in place here. I already know that you don't know this stuff. I just want you to understand it. So anyway, this is White House officials have instead cited a more limited poll that Fabrizio then conducted a month later, concluding that the issue is a political loser. And they did it so they could justify RFK Jr. pivoting to food safety, away from vaccines. That's the other thing. We've looked at this and said, wait a minute, this is crazy. He went there, he had all these concerns when he was at Children's Self-Defense about vaccine safety. Now he goes there and all he wants to do is talk about food additives. Yeah, that's something to talk about. And you can expose that and talk about it. But again, that the elephant in the room is the fact they're injecting poison into people's veins. Then we can get to the Kool-Aid that they're drinking and how the excessive sugar and even real Kool-Aid is not very good for you. Talk about that later, but let's first start with the injection of aluminum, formaldehyde, and other things into your veins. Let's begin right there. So RFK Jr. then pivoted to food policy. You see, they already wanted to do this. So what they do is they do a poll to justify that. The shift away from vaccines at Kennedy's department culminated last week in the termination of the lead author of the Trump administration's policy on childhood vaccination schedule. And that's one of the reasons that they're doing this. And of course, some of these people will be fired. RFK Jr., on the other hand, is malleable. They can hammer him into the shape that they want. That's really what it means. So the secret Fabrizio poll, which had not been previously reported, tells a very different story than the one that they published. It shows voters' top health concern is the drug lobby's influence on public policy, on medical research, and on news coverage. We don't like people controlling our information, but the people who control our information don't want you to see that we all dislike that. That's the bottom line here, isn't it? So we must not let them know. If they all get the idea that, hey, 90% of the people hate the fact that an industry or a foreign country is controlling our media, controlling our news, and using it to lie to us, to steal from us, and to kill us. Yeah, people don't like that. So nearly 7 out of 10 voters want more research on vaccines' cumulative effect in infants. Especially. The Daily Caller has obtained the poll, but we're not publishing it at the request of its source, who does not have permission to release it. Fabrizio's firm did not respond to requests for comment. Since April 30th, 3 top officials leading drug policies at the FDA, including Commissioner Marty Makary, all prominent critics of the Biden administration's COVID vaccine policies, who sought to improve agency standards, have been squeezed out of the administration. You see, it's always okay to criticize Biden. It's never okay to criticize Trump. We talked about that yesterday. You know, the comical cabinet meetings, which they broadcast and they give the transcripts for. And you can see how these people are effusively praising Trump and, of course, themselves. And then how every problem in the world is the fault of Biden. I don't think Biden was a great guy. I don't think the Biden administration, whoever was running it, had our interests in mind, but it is cartoon crazy to do this way. And so they were talking about the Biden administration's COVID vaccine policies. Just understand, his vaccine policies were no different than Trump's. You're just going to say, well, Biden did this, and it's like, yeah, well, you know, Trump did that as well. The two of them were 100% together on the same policy. 100%. The COVID, the vaccine mandates that Biden pushed out there had already been war gamed and had already been put together by Trump, because these things, folks, were set up 2 months before 9/11 with Dark Winter. All of these policies were put into place. They practiced it. They war gamed it every year, at least once, for 20 years. And so Trump's policies, which are really coming from the intelligence and defense agencies, were the same as Biden's. They just want to play this partisan charade. So when they criticize Biden's policies, you can't do that for too long. If you actually get to the policy itself, if you go beyond the label of Biden did that, then you get back to exactly the policies that Trump had. They cannot have that. Kennedy had sought to mimic older vaccine studies using existing FDA databases, while Makary wanted stronger clinical trials from vaccine manufacturers themselves. In other words, he wanted them to go back and do this again. You know, let's really do a test this time, and let's see how you're going to do the test. The FDA overhaul also came amid, and we'll talk about an overhaul, the firing of several people who went there to push this, looking a more careful look at the vaccine issue. It also came amid a covert lobbying effort from pharma companies who turned to allies in the press, allies in Congress, allies in the White House. You see, the unholy trinity that the Zionists also control. This is what these institutions, organizations, foreign governments, whenever they want to control us, it's very easy to capture these three because they're actually out there seeking, like prostitutes. They're standing on the corner looking for somebody who's going to give them money. They're more than willing to do a trick for you. and they're more than willing to trick the public. The White House is eager to dial down the noise, according to other press reports. So they wanted to stop all this discussion about vaccines. It's bad for our donations. So what'd they do? You had White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, who has worked at a lobbying group that had as its client big pharmaceutical companies. HHS Chief Counselor Chris Klump. They championed other things like Trump RX. Yeah, let's do a partnership where we'll help the government will help pharmaceutical companies sell you drugs. A direct-to-consumer website to buy discounted drugs, an executive order on studying psychedelics to treat mental illness. This is talk about distracting people. Here, have some LSD and forget about all this stuff.
Wait a minute, CIA's done that before.
Yeah, they just keep reverting back to type, don't they? So if you get people hyped up enough on these psychedelics, they won't worry about this stuff. So let's push that out there. A side-by-side comparison of the secret poll and the two published ones shows a very stark contrast, says the Daily Caller. In the polls that were made public, the questions appear designed to dilute perceived support for the issue by prompting voters to consider established vaccine schedules and long-standing vaccine policies. You see, you use those words like established and long-standing. You are pushing people in a particular direction, aren't you? So the way that you phrase the question, who you choose, they don't even go into who do they choose to ask these questions to. But in this particular poll, I don't think that was really relevant because they'd found out in the first poll that they kept secret was that this was bipartisan. This is not a Republican-Democrat thing. And so, well, let's use this argument from authority. It's established. It's longstanding. You don't agree with that, do you? If you do, you're kind of a crazy radical. This is what everybody else says. This is the Milgram experiment approach, right? The person in authority, or the Ash experiment, where the people all around you all support this, and even if you think that's wrong, people tend to go with what everybody else in the room is saying. So they call it established and longstanding. That kind of framing contrasts with Trump's own messaging as recently as December, where he said the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule is unusual compared to other Western nations, and that the total impact has not been well studied. See, he says that, but he doesn't believe that. That's his talking points. That's the other part of this. They do secret polls. They know what MAGA wants, and so that's what Trump says. And then he does what his corporate sponsors or foreign governments tell him that they want. So he says what you want to hear. He does what his owners and handlers want him to do. While the unpublished poll found that nearly 3/4 of voters expressed concerns about childhood vaccination requirements and mandates, a public poll conducted by Fabrizio's firm, the same people, a month later, instead asked whether the administration should, quote, remove established childhood vaccine recommendations, but there's a recommendation, for diseases like whooping cough, measles, hepatitis, and others. When they phrased it that way, it went from 75% of the people, and when they asked them, are you concerned about childhood vaccination requirements and mandates? When they changed it from, and asked that question, 3/4 of the people say, yeah, I am concerned about mandates. I am concerned about requirements for children with vaccines. When they come back and say, well, we have this long established childhood vaccine recommendation, do you support that? Well, then it goes from 75% down to 22% who don't support that. See how easy that is to manipulate people's opinion? And again, very, very easily manipulated. The secret poll gauged voter sentiments in the pharmaceutical industry. Just 18% of the voters had a favorable view of Big Pharma. Only 18%. Voters expressed broad support for curbing the power of vaccine manufacturers. They expressed strong support for more parental decision-making and for more research. A bipartisan majority of voters, 68% or more, again, bipartisan, 68% or more, agreed with each of the following statements. Number one, study potential complications of infants taking too many vaccines too quickly. This cluster effect is what causes the reaction. It's what causes sudden infant death syndrome. And guess what? We all know that. 68% of the people, bipartisan support, knows that. The vast majority of people know that. Then another one that they all agreed on, 68% or more, said government should not provide blanket immunity to vaccine manufacturers. Why should any industry get blanket immunity for the harm that they do? Of course, the answer is obvious. None should. And then finally, governments and the individual share responsibility over vaccination, or the government has no role at all. So in other words, you're going to get our consent, and or the other position is you shouldn't even be trying to tell us what to do. And that's my position. Only 11% said the government alone should make decisions on vaccines. You're always going to have that group of people in every one of these studies. It's just the absolute insane fringe that's there.
Yeah, there's 90% in the fair poll. I guess this is the 10% that were against that.
37% of voters said they believe there is no reason to change how children are given vaccines, while 45% said families should have the choice to spread out the schedule. 8% said that they are outright unsafe. Now I'm in the 10% of the people. I'm in that quadrant. It's like, get these things out of our lives. In this published poll, Fabrizio did not, that was in the secret poll. In the published poll, Fabrizio didn't ask these kind of questions at all. Instead, he asked about support for individual vaccines. Well, hey, do you like the MMR vaccine or the Tdap or the hepatitis B vaccine? How about shingles vaccine for people over 50? And everybody's like, oh, yeah, okay. All right, we'll do that.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I've been told those are good things.
yeah. I heard a lot of good stuff about that. You know, they cured polio too, didn't they? We're never going to get that one out of people's heads. The poll was commissioned by the MAHA Action Group, but it was never published. Yeah, when you talk about MAHA, as I said from the very beginning, no, it's ha-ha. They're laughing at you. As RFK Jr. said when he went there, and he said, my mission is to restore trust in these institutions. And it's not just restoring trust in the FDA and trust in the CDC. His mission is to restore trust in Big Pharma.
Well, if
That's what his mission is.
If he'd released this poll, it would have reduced trust. So
That's right.
It makes sense.
That's right. So absolutely cannot do that. And we can't have these people like Trump just fired.
And what a cynical name, the MAHA Action Group. They're for action, just not actions like, showing the actual polls that they already have.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want people getting any ideas about taking any action. Let's hide that poll. Well, we have Tony Arterman's going to join us, and we're going to talk about the economy and what is happening with gold and silver. And I think it is very interesting to take a look at this because we are at the cusp of some major global issues that are going to affect many nations, the actual governments here. And the governments who have been stacking gold are now in such dire straits in many of the poor nations that they're having to dip into that stash of gold in order to survive, whether they are producing oil or whether they are importing oil for consumption. They're having a big problem because of what Trump has done with this war for Israel. And so it's kind of interesting to look at this and where is this headed? What will be the reaction of the new Fed chair? And there's a lot of division within the Federal Reserve as well, because you've got people who are diehard Keynesians, and they're going to want to, when they look at unemployment going up, and there's a lot of reasons for that happening, they're going to want to do easing. And of course, Trump wants to do easing, quantitative easing or interest rates. Both of those things are going to be highly inflationary. But both of those things are he wants inflation, because inflation is going to help him to pay back the debt that he has with cheaper dollars. This is one of the reasons why last week I said I was getting served all these videos on YouTube about people saying, hey, the government is going to cancel your mortgage. That was a clickbait headline. And so I clicked on it. What's this guy even talking about here? And the whole idea was, well, the government wants inflation because they've got this big $40 trillion mortgage and they can't even cover the interest payments on it. And so they want inflation to make it easier for them to pay back this fixed amount that is there. And so that's going to reflect on you as well. If you've got a fixed home mortgage, you can pay it back with cheaper dollars, assuming that you're not on a fixed income, assuming that you're not retired or something like that. If you are out there working in a job, assuming that you keep your job and businesses don't go bankrupt, then they're going to start paying you more because of inflation. It may not keep up with inflation, but you'll still be making dollars in terms of how they're counted by the Federal Reserve notes. You'll still be making more of those things, or the simoleon credits or whatever, to pay back your mortgage. And with the mortgage being fixed in those units, if you're getting more of those manufactured units, it makes it easier for you. That's why Trump is so desperate to cut interest rates. They've already started the quantitative easing. There's many other things that they're going to do. So we're going to talk about that when Tony Arterburn gets on. Before we go to Tony, I just wanted to thank people. We're getting close to the end of the month, and we're getting closer to the goal that we have. Right now, we're just above 70%. So we're going to move the gas gauge up to 3/4, and because it's the closest unit that we've got to it. I want to thank some of the people who have supported the program, because these are the people who keep the program going. On Cash App, Clifford A., thank you very much. Robert A., several times here. Daniel and Michael B. And on Zelle, we have some people. Since I last read this, we've had Michael P., Brandon M., Matthew M., Lisa K., Lois I., Josephine C., Susan L., Michael P., again, Scott L., Amy B., and Kenneth C. Thank you so much, all of you. And we're getting here close to the end of the month. Really do appreciate the support. And I want to thank people for recommending some of the fine interviews that we've had as well. Interviews come to us in a lot of different forms. Sometimes we've had some really good guests that have been recommended to us by those of you who are listening. And just want to encourage you, if you've got somebody that you'd like to hear from, let us know. We're always open to those types of suggestions. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Whether you're feeling like the blues or bluegrass, APS Radio has you covered. Check out a wide variety of channels on our app at apsradio.com.
Well, as Tony's going to be joining us in just a few minutes, let me kind of set the table here. This is a really fun article to read. It was funny. This was by somebody at The Atlantic. And of course, The Atlantic is a kind of left-wing Democrat Party-based publication. The person says, "I now believe our national debt is a problem." This is somebody who worked for the Biden administration as an economic advisor, Jared Bernstein. And I have to say, Jared, I got 40 trillion reasons I could give you for why the federal debt is a problem, but he never saw this before. Again, most of these people in the Biden administration, they're coming from the modern monetary theory. That doesn't matter. If inflation gets out of control, we just raise taxes. That's all we have to do. To them, everything is just spending and then, raise the taxes or whatever. Very simplified, stupid model. Keynesianism isn't much better. And so when we look at this, it is, we got Tony is ready. So let me go to him. But real quickly, let me thank some of the people who've left tips here. IRS Machine Gun, thank you very much. He says $5, 1 gallon of gas to start the day off. Yeah, it's it's rapidly approaching that magic number of $5.02 that the Trump people campaigned on. Look at how bad Biden is, how Biden did this. And now there's the stickers everywhere about Trump doing that. Do not obey. Thank you very much as well. It says 2 huge gallons from the both of us. So happy Thursday, everyone. Stealth Patriot, thank you. He says, thank God that he has given us the grace of being secure of our salvation and freedom from fear, because the enemy is weaponizing everything he can against us. We're going to talk about that very thing when we get to AI, because that is the issue. When you look at these insurmountable and the problems that really are intractable, I mean, we look at this dilemma and it's like, well, you got on the one side, you got people saying this artificial intelligence has potential to do some really horrible stuff. And it has the potential to do that horrible stuff on behalf of the government to us. And yet their response is to say, well, what we need government control of this. And it's like, well, even if you had government control, what is the government going to use? How could they do that? And if they did it, would they do it for their own purposes? Yes, of course, because human nature does not change. But behind all of this is our secure confidence, as we say, our hope. That is a confident expectation of our relationship with God and who he is, and our trust in that. That is what gives us stability in these times. Doug, thank you very much. He says, thank you for spreading the good word during your broadcast. Let all hit the like button to help push the show. Thank you. And a little fuel for the gas. Thank you very much. And he's got an emoji salute, which I've never seen that before. That's clever. Thank you. Freetard said, I thought RFK saved us from the fluoride, but no. No, as a matter of fact, wasn't it interesting how silent he was as the Trump EPA came out and pushed that down? We had a big victory, and they snatched defeat for us, and RFK Jr. was silent. And of course, he's also silent about the PFAs. The Trump administration and its EPA is now reducing any kind of restrictions on that as well. Birdhouse Blues, that red dye and food policy got walked. What is that? In food. Okay. In food. That's a typo. Okay. That red dye and food policy got walked back too. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know they even pulled that back. So I guess, the red dye is bad for you. The blue dye, the methylene blue, that's good for you. RFK Jr. even takes that himself. Well, without any further ado, Tony is waiting. Let's go ahead and get Tony on the line. Thank you for joining us, Tony. And
it's great to be back.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
And again, Tony Arterburn with Wise Wolf Gold. He has set up davidknight.gold, and that'll take you to him. Let him know that you've come through us. And it's always great to have Tony on. And Tony is the guy that packs your parachute financially here for you. It's a way to gradually accumulate with Wolfpack. He's got something that I don't know of anybody else that does that. He lets you sign up. You can start at $50 a month, I think, and go up. And you can set a budget and start to gradually accumulate gold and silver on a regular basis. And that's a great way to do it, because we all need to have a savings program, and it also dollar cost averages out things. Now, things have kind of stabilized a little bit now after all of the speculation that was happening. And some of the people who are looking at the gold market said, well, this is basically a good thing because we had all kinds of wild speculators jumping into gold. They've jumped out, but that's not really the dominating factor, I don't think. I really do believe that it's these companies, Tony, that not companies, countries that are having big issues. We've talked about Turkey. You've got India and some other countries that are not really very wealthy in terms of their people who are putting controls on whether they can buy gold or silver. And I think it's interesting that as low as the income is in India, they're huge buyers of gold and silver. They want something that is real.
Well, that's exactly right. And to go back to what you were saying before this segment, you were talking about Jared Bernstein. He's the one that wrote the op-ed about how we should lose the dollar's reserve status as the world's reserve currency. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that. I would have said that. Yeah. So this is the kind of guy that was a financial advisor for Biden. I used to not think that the debt was a problem. And I guess you'll find out, Tony, that if you lose the reserve dollar status, that's going to be a problem as well.
No, it's all going to be fine if the dollar velocity, everything collapses. It's all going to be fine. I thought that was just so reckless, and it shows the underlying current of not understanding the monetary policy. I don't know how they got as far as they did, honestly. And you talk about the issues and what people are misunderstanding. In my opinion, looking at all the countries that are having to liquidate right now. I mean, Russia has depleted a big chunk of its gold reserves in response to what's going on with their war effort and the price of energy. It really is everything that was driving gold is still there. The issue is the Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the price of crude and the unknown factors in the energy supply, David. That's what's keeping the prices below 5,000 on gold. It's also suppressing silver because it has an unknown economic factor in production for industrial metal like silver and the future of that. So everything's just hanging in the balance. Interesting though, is that while India is having an issue, they've got the import tariffs. I think they're like 6 weeks out on processing through customs for precious metals deliveries. So that's a real issue. It's driving up premiums inside the country, so physical premiums. But it really is. The factor here is energy and the cost of that and the unknown. And there's also the Kevin Warsh nomination, and I think the question marks that hang over that as well. Like, are we going to maintain rates? Are we going to raise rates? Or are they going to try to offset the inflation caused by the high energy prices through rates when the market's expecting a rate cut? So there's a lot of unknown factors right now, but I think if we'll just step back for a minute, you and I both know that in 2 years, the dollar is going to have less purchasing power than it does today.
A lot less. Yeah, just look at the grocery store. I mean, you're really feeling the pinch there already. And isn't it interesting, Tony? You mentioned Russia. Here's Russia, and they're having economic difficulty having to sell off some gold because, and they're a net exporter of energy. And yet they're still suffering with this. Why is it? Because of war, right? And is that a lesson for us? Oh, yeah, we don't have anything to worry about. Look at, we're a net exporter of oil and energy. Well, you can shoot yourself in the foot badly enough that you die from it, can't you? And you can do that with these wars.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's the war effort. And again, the factored in cost of rising energy prices, even if you are a net exporter, it still is a commodity. Oil's still a commodity. Even if you have it, it's still a commodity. It still bleeds into your everyday purchasing. So there's all those unknown factors that are built into this. Russia, even though, again, they're a net exporter of energy, they have massive gold reserves, and they've been accumulating gold, much like China, for the last 20 plus years. But it's still, and everyone is affected by what's going on with the prices of energy. And the crisis in 2008 and 2009, David, was not so much a subprime mortgage collapse as it was an energy crisis. I mean, that's what happened when there was all the cheap money that was floating around, all the cheap currency and all the debt that was created. People bought things, and that drove up the price of everyday items. So much was imported. So places like India, places like China, They had to spend more on energy. It drove the price up at the pump for the average American. Average American decided it was better to pay for gasoline than a subprime mortgage. That's really what
Mhm.
happened.
Mhm.
So that was an energy issue as well. And I think that's just it's very short-sighted to look at this and look at the prices of metals right now and determine that they're just not going to hold up. They're not going to continue in an upward trajectory against the dollar based off of the economic factors that we see right now. But I don't think this is going to last. I think there's going to be another reset of dollar valuation against commodities within the next 24 months.
I agree. And, you know, when you look at this, my parents' generation was shaped by the Depression, right? And the hardship that they went through with that. My personal background was shaped by the 1973 OPEC oil embargo and the effect that it had in terms of it happened right as I was getting out of school. We're trying to buy a house and all the other issues that were happening there and the insanity that was around that, the inflation, the mortgage rates that were sky high. And and I go back and look at it, and I looked at it when all this stuff kicked off. And I thought, well, you know, what happened the last time we did? And I was surprised to see that I didn't realize that the OPEC oil embargo was only against the United States and it was only a small percentage of our oil. But as you're talking about Russia being a net exporter of energy, this is a global market, just as the Chevron CEO explained to the news reporter who was interviewing him. He goes, yeah, you know, the price of oil is set based on global demand. And, you know, if you have even just one country that is singled out, and is boycotted or sanctioned or whatever, that affects everybody in the world. And it affects everybody, even if you are a net exporter of energy, as you're pointing out, it still affects Russia, doesn't it? And this is even worse because this isn't just a forced interruption. This is destruction, not interruption. This is destruction of oil production capacity. And it's going to have very long-lasting effects. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at, they're concerned, well, we can't let the Iranians have a toll at Hormuz. And if we do that, then there's going to be other countries that are going to do that as well. Well, there are some other countries that already do have a toll set up at natural straits, not just at canals that have been constructed. And but Trump even came out yesterday and just off the top of his head threatened to destroy Oman. And there was a Fox commentator who said, just really taken back about that, even on Fox News. And he says, so here's a new one. We've never seen anybody threaten Oman because Oman is on the other side of Iran on the Strait of Hormuz. And they have cooperated in the past on some joint projects. And they're saying, yeah, the two of us will collect a toll that is there. And Trump says, well, we'll bomb you then, that type of thing. Pretty crazy, isn't it?
No, that's the Trump chaos factor.
That's right.
The factoring in America's new schizophrenia that we have. Apparently, we just create problems for the sake of problems to have them, and that's been key. The second administration, it started off with that. It started off with the tariffs. I call that the black swan event that really cascaded the price of metals. We forget that gold was just over $2,000 an ounce at the beginning of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've broken 5,000. We've hit, further than that and pulled back to 4,400 and a half right now. But I think that's indicative of just the unknown factors, David. The markets love certainty. And we don't have any certainty for the markets right now. And you mentioned the 1970s, and people right now, the chatter is that the Warsh nomination is as consequential as Paul Volcker's nomination to head up the Federal Reserve. And the reason that Paul Volcker was brought in is because we went off the gold standard in 71. You had the OPEC oil embargo, you had all that. We had the first trade deficits running for the United States ever in our history that were compounding, and you had runaway inflation. So Paul Volcker was brought in to head up the Federal Reserve, and he inched up interest rates, as you mentioned. The mortgage rates were in the teens by the end of his term. And of course, he brought in, it was the Reaganomics, Reagan era, and you had the go-go 80s. And so a lot of that was swept under the rug because we did some Keynesian injections into the economy, especially with the military industrial complex and other things. There was a tech boom. But the problem with trying to compare that and where we're headed to in the next 5 years is that the debt of the U.S. was about $1 trillion in 1979, 1980, and we're adding $1 trillion every 90 days. And when you get to 100% of debt to GDP, of gross domestic product, most economists say that that's a tipping point. We've only had that a couple of times in our history, as I understand. I mean, World War II was an example, and the
But
debt
even
was
then,
like
that was a very different. We were in a much stronger position then at that point in time.
much stronger.
I mean, we were
Absolutely.
manufacturing center and all the rest. We were basically the only one left standing with a manufacturing center. So that was a very unusual situation. We don't have that anymore. All the fundamentals have changed, as you're pointing out.
Yeah, all the fundamentals changed, and so the debt to GDP is going to be the issue. That the fact that we're we're not the manufacturing marvel of mankind or the arsenal of democracy or anything like that anymore. We're a consumption nation. Even Paul Volcker said that. You know, they asked him what the underlying weaknesses in the economy were, and he says we went from production to consumption. That was under congressional testimony. So I don't, there's a lot of speculation here, and there's been major liquidations by some countries. But if you look at what's happening with gold, David, the central banks are still buying at a record pace. So you might exclude some countries that are liquidating for the energy crisis, uh, but overall, that demand is still up by institutions. So they know where the currency issue is headed. I mean, they're not stocking up on their own currencies. They're certainly not stocking up on dollars or treasuries. We got a real, I mean, the Japanese are in the same, they're reaching, another critical point where they have to, sell off treasuries and sell off assets to buoy the yen and keep it alive. So that's happening. Currencies all over the planet are going through this. So I think we're in honestly a bargain phase right now for precious metals. Long term still looks great against the dollar, again, which is a free floating fiat currency backed by nothing. I'm going to bet on hard assets
That's
over
right.
the long time, despite the ups and downs of the everyday market.
That's right. Hard assets and hard trends, because these trends have absolutely not changed. It's the stock market, and just like the spot gold price, these people are blown around by every statement from the president or every statement from the Federal Reserve. If a Federal Reserve chief comes out and says, well, I think we've got irrational exuberance, everybody freaks out irrationally. And so that's, they hang on these different words and they overreact to all of this stuff. And yet the trends are very slow moving and not that hard to discern, actually. And that's really what you got to look at, is the long-term trend that is there. And not the day-to-day fluctuations that are there, which is based on hype and fear.
It's hype and then not understanding, I think, the true consequences of where we've found ourselves in the world standing today, geopolitically and economically, not truly grasping that. It's just interesting, David, that the chatter that I find through my research, and I didn't see this initially, but I'm starting to see it now, which is the nomination of Warsh is a shot across the bow to precious metals. There's that sentiment is going around by analysts saying that this was a takedown. It's a hit job to precious metals through the nomination of Warsh for the Federal Reserve to take back command of the dollar standing, because every time gold rises, the dollar loses standing. And that's been the case. And they knew that, even going back to 1980 when gold hit $800 an ounce. Part of the job of the central bank and the financial class in general was to suppress that, and they did a really good job for most of my life. I mean, look at silver. Silver was $52 in 1980. They went in and took out the financially kneecapped the Hunt family who had exposed that physical silver, when you buy it on demand, drives the price up. Nobody ever did that again. And now I think a lot of things got away from them just because of the de-dollarization that's gone on around the world. We have less ability to bully people and weaponize the dollar at this point.
Yeah.
So the speculation that Warsh is going to bring down the prices of precious metals and restabilize the dollar, I think, is laughable.
Yeah, yeah, it's a Ponzi scheme, and everybody understands that. And there's a lot of other issues that are happening in the geopolitical issue because, again, the petrodollar was also tied into geopolitics. And we've got people who are running the geopolitics now, call it ego politics. It's laughable. And so that is not going to be something that we can play to as a strength as they did before. And so I don't really see that he holds that much in terms of cards. You know, Trump always likes to talk about who holds the cards. Well, his history as a casino owner holding the cards does not inspire any confidence. I think it's again laughable in the extreme. So I think basically they're starting to, they've been running a confidence game, a Ponzi scheme, and people are catching on to it. Globally, it's not just the consumers, but globally people are catching on to it. So they got to invent a new con game, and I think that's where they're going to try to pivot to the things like the so-called stable coins, which are not coins and are not going to be stable either. That's going to be the thing where they make a lot of money, and that's going to be their next go-to move, I think. Something completely different.
I think the underlying economic policies being carried out right now by the ruling class are part of the Great Reset. I think they're part of the controlled demolition. I think it's creative destruction, whatever you want to call it.
I agree.
But I don't think it's about building wealth and prosperity for the American people or the world or
nothing is. Yeah. Nothing they do is about the good of the people. Yeah.
I mean, we had so many deals to make, and there was a lot of inroads we could have made with this new administration, coming into 25, and everything that we could have done wrong, we have done. I mean, on paper, it is not stable.
Yeah.
The markets are not happy, and there's just again a lot of confusion. I think the people are reading the tea leaves perhaps backwards. They're looking at it like, well, this is going to be, an attack on precious metals, or we're going to reset the dollar, or whatever. If you know the metrics like I do about dollar usage, because I followed that and I've been following it for years, it is rapidly declining. There's a reason they have the phrase is called de-dollarization. I don't think that phrase was around. I'd never heard that until about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So de-dollarization is real and it's happening. I mean, since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which they were goaded into, since that in February of 2022, global usage of the dollar in financial transactions went from 56% to 41%. That was 4 years ago. So, you look at the BRICS nations that are continuing to set up their cross-border payment systems and everything else that comes onto the market. You can, throw in things like Bitcoin and others. The dollar domination is on the way out.
I don't think that Iran and Oman are going to be setting up the toll prices in U.S. dollars. They're at the Strait of Hormuz.
No,
they've already used Bitcoin. Yeah. Sorry.
It was June of 2024, David, that we lost the petrodollar. That was a 50-year agreement lapse, and we did nothing to try to bolster that. I thought that was a big red flag. And we mentioned Jared Bernstein earlier. He was part of recognize we can get no more petrodollar, and we should lose king dollar status as world's reserve currency, which perhaps we should. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's a real problem with holding the world's reserve currency. And I remember I talked to you about that term Triffin's dilemma. About Robert Triffin was an economist in the 1960s, and he was speaking to Congress, and this was part of the dilemma that he had as an economist. What happens if you're the world's reserve currency, if the currency ever gets repatriated in a rapid form? Like what happens if you lose that and those dollars come home? Well, think of all the trillions of dollars that stocked, central banks since 1945 until now. And all of even the metrics on cash too, David, that's another thing for the dollar. This doesn't bode well. Is 80% of all the U.S. paper currency is not in the continental United States. It's used outside of CONUS. So a lot of that could be repurposed and sent back, or, eventually we're going to be flooded back with dollars.
It's held by the people that Trump is making enemies out of, because he's making enemies out of the entire world. He's decided he's going to go after everybody country by country. And it's already reflected in the general population, the fact that people don't even want to come here for a vacation. in spite of all the great things there are to do in the U.S. And it's because of Trump. But he's making enemies out of the people as well as the leaders of all these different countries. And as you point out, they've got 80% of our currency out there. I mean, it really is. These chickens are going to come home to roost, aren't they? All this paper money. And, when you look at the consequences of it, losing the dollar status, it is going to be very, very difficult for those of us who are Americans. I mean, we're going to see a big change in our life. However, sometimes I look at it as the cost of freedom. If that could break the power of the federal government to bribe us, to blackmail us with the paper money, if it could break the power of the American empire to drag us into one war after the other, it's worth it. And so I had to stand with some of the Biden economists to say, yeah, let's get rid of the petrodollar. Let's stop the U.S. from having a reserve. It's going to really hurt us all economically, but there are things that are more important than money, I think.
I'm thinking of a phrase I read from Pat Buchanan about the decline of the West, and he said something like, "There's a difference between a grand lady, walking down a staircase or a slattern being kicked down." Like he's talking like two different visions. You can have, and that's been my argument is, yes, we are no longer in the American dominated world. Truly, we lost that standing, I think, through stupid on purpose actions over the last 50 plus years and accelerating in the last 20. We didn't have to lose it this way, but my argument's always been, let's have a different kind of reset. I think it should be slower and give people time to catch up. We can put in better systems. We can bolster the economy through trade and other things.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. They don't do anything slowly, though.
No.
It's just like you do with tariffs. I think it'd be better if we were less dependent on foreign countries that can cut us off and everything. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just cut everything off tomorrow. We don't have any infrastructure to make up for what was cut off. He just pulls up the drawbridge the next day. It's crazy. He doesn't do anything and think about it in terms of transitioning. But I've got some comments and some questions for you, Tony. I'm Marty. Thank you very much for the tip, Marty. I appreciate that. He says, doesn't having gold on hand to sell when needed show the wisdom of having precious metals? And I think that's the key thing. When we look at this is what's happening with the sovereign nations, many of them. And of course, it's what we need to do as individuals. For the longest time, I remember when I was in college, they would have, the microeconomics, that's what you need for your family budget. That's what you need if you got a business. But hey, John Maynard Keynes said, if you got macroeconomics, deficits don't matter. That's what got us to this point. No, if it's economic reality applies to both nations and to individuals. So when we talk about what the nation is doing, what are we as individuals doing? Are we setting aside things for a rainy day? That's the key thing, I think.
You got to invoke Keynes, and you got to get some of that barbarous relic to store against this. I think Luciferian bankster notes, I call them, the U.S. dollar now. What it's become. It's not a dollar as good as gold. It's not what was intended by our founding fathers or people that understood, how you could have tyranny from the central bank. We didn't. This is something new on the American landscape. I mean, really, truly, the fiat currency system is an experiment, and the average lifespan of a fiat currency is 26 years. And we went off the gold standard in 1971. We were able to carry this a lot farther, David, because we had the world reserve currency status, and people all over the globe and countries and institutions use the dollar, and that's what stabilized it. But we abused that privilege.
That's right.
We abused it and weaponized it and bullied people. And then you throw in this chaos that you have with the Trump administration, with the threat of tariffs and then no tariffs, and then there's going to be 100% tariffs if you don't use the dollar. It's just continued de-dollarization even faster, which is my argument is that this is on purpose. I don't see anything. We're not in good standing.
As you said so many times, I don't know who it was that you're quoting, but if they were making mistakes, at least every once in a while they would make the right decision. When they do everything wrong,
that's That's what James Forrestal told Joe McCarthy. James Forrestal was pushed out of a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital. He's the first Secretary of Defense, under Truman. So he knew some things. I
Yeah.
spoke on that a couple of months ago at a Rotary Club meeting in Denison, Texas. Some of the they were following me, but it was pretty eyes wide open on that one. But we talked about. I mentioned that who Joe McCarthy was and all the rest. But that's exactly right. I mean, you have to just to look at this from a different perspective. I mean, kind of get away from the daily trading and other things. And it can be the volatility, I think, is the giveaway. The volatility in an asset, David, shows its strength and where it could go. Kind of like Bitcoin over time. Bitcoin's been at 125,000. It's down into like mid-70s right now. Gut instinct on that tells me I'm going to see $100,000 Bitcoin again, just given the world system and the way that the economics work. And look at some places like Iran using Bitcoin for non-confiscatable tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. That's just one example. So volatility usually points to the strength and the potentiality of an asset to go higher. And I think silver's there for sure. Gold's there because we've seen gold hit higher prices. I mean, if gold hit $5,600 an ounce and it's at 44 and a half right now, do you think it's going to go back to 56? Well, of course it is. And then people that are worried that are dumping it, they're just short term. That's trading. That's not what you and I do. It's not what the normal American. That's a very small sliver of things people extract. I guess you could call it wealth. They extract things parasitically from the market, trading back and forth over and over. But you got to look to the long term. The long term says, the dollar loses purchasing power. Gold is finite, takes a lot of resources to get it out of the ground. It's universally recognized as money. Countries around the world will go back to it. And the gold is already the world's reserve currency again, just not in name. It's surpassed the euro 18 months ago, David, as the world's most held reserve asset. And then it surpassed the dollar through both currency holdings and treasury. Now, I didn't see that coming. I knew that we surpassed treasury holdings in gold, but what happened was the central banks that have been buying for so long now, the last, especially since Russia invaded Ukraine, their holdings went up. And so the amount of wealth held in the gold surpassed the dollar. So we're in a transitionary phase where gold is going to supplant the dollar. It's a question of when, not if.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have, speaking of questions of when and how, we do have some other questions and comments here. Real Jason Barker, good to see you, Jason. Knights of the Storm. He says, can you ask Tony what a fair buy and sell price is for metals, like compared to spot?
Well, as a dealer, I certainly try to get as close to spot as I can because I'd like to, to both serve the public, and be a fair player in the system. The problem is that when you have so much volatility, like we saw in silver, it's harder and harder to get closer to spot when there's that much the swings because you can wipe out, these big wholesalers and places and clearinghouses. They will buy for less, which puts downward pressure on dealers like me. So, for instance, right now, like on gold, if you're bringing me gold bullion, I'm around 95% of spot. I used to be a little bit higher, but premiums have gone down on gold. So if you're liquidating gold with me, I'm about 95% of the spot price. Silver, between 92 and 95%, depending on quantity. It's harder and harder to get to spot, which is funny because in 2021, 2022, I bought gold at spot, David.
Yeah.
And the reason is I would buy gold. I buy most gold at spot because there would always be somebody walking in to buy some gold from me if I bought gold bullion. That doesn't happen as often as it used to. So I end up having to liquidate a lot of my stuff to wholesalers because of the price. It's a lot easier to buy a $1,600 ounce of gold than it is to buy a $5,000 ounce of gold, and I think that's slowed down a bit of the buying prices. But the smaller items, those clear out a lot faster. I would look, in the long run, I think we'll be closer to spot as dealers when there is some sort of equilibrium. But right now we don't have it because of the chaos. I mean, the chaos drives the prices back and forth violently. If you have a $100 swing in gold, you got a real problem. Especially if you're buying a lot. So I think that's the short answer of that is anything below 90% generally is kind of pawn shop rates. You want to stay away from stuff like that. There's always a dealer that will pay over 90% on good institutional bullion.
And while we're on that topic there, and you're talking about how it's easier to buy gold when it's $1,600 an ounce versus when it's $5,000 an ounce. Do you expect that when things start to come back and we start seeing price movement going up, because everybody, as you point out, we were at $5,600 an ounce, and now you look at pretty much most of these large banks and financial institutions, their commodity analysts are saying, yeah, 5,500 by the end of the year. That's not a real speculation that is out there. Recovering by the end of the year. And so, when things start to recover, or even at the point where it is right now, do you think we're going to see a big increase in instruments that are going to be smaller than an ounce of gold? In other words, like some of these gold backs that you got and things like that. Is that really going to take off?
I think so. I think the higher that gold climbs, the more emphasis will be put on fractional gold as opposed to the old ounces, that's what a $20 gold piece used to be. A $20 gold piece in the United States, which was $20 until 1933, is 0.9675 ounces. But the problem is gold has gone up so much against a declining dollar that fractional gold becomes a lot more useful. I mean, if you have a 1/10 ounce piece right now, it's about $500 in value. You got a 1/10 of an ounce, so you get those 1/10 of an ounce sovereign coins. Those are great to have. Even the grams, and if you buy gold grams from me, I pass on a decent amount of savings because we buy them in bulk on the sheets, and then I have my team break them apart. So all the combination bars through Valcambi, we actually create our own gold gram bars. So I think if you're stacking right now and you're looking at the price and maybe you bought in 5,000 plus, that's okay. So did I. It's same thing on all these commodities. I mean, I have silver in my safe right now that I was buying at over $100 an ounce, and I've still got it, and it doesn't bother me at all because I understand on a long enough timeline, all of this stuff gets reset and finds its natural kind of like water finds a level. We're in a weird time right now,
That's
and
right.
trying to glean any sort of sense out of it is really hard to do. Because it's not just one thing, it's multi-factored, it's all built into the price. So, fractional gold, great thing to have. There'll be more of it. I think it'll be more ubiquitous in how people hold gold. And that's one of the things I try to offer with Wolfpack is it is fractional. I mean, our highest Wolfpack package is 5,000 for an automatic. I don't know if we have any 5,000 automatics. I know I got some 2,000 and 3,000 autos. And those are the Zen Wolves. But if you just get a little bit of fractional gold, as long as you're stacking and not overpaying premium, I see a lot of that happening in our industry. It's embarrassing. A lot of people, Tucker Carlson ran a great expose on that, showing a lot of these people get ripped off on IRAs and stuff. I don't do any of that. I mean, it's market driven. I look at, I'm probably one of the only dealers out there that'll show you the competitors' pricing. I want you to see a full spectrum of what we're trying to do. And yeah, we do have to make some money to keep the lights on, but it's not a grifting operation like a lot of these other things are. And I understand because I'm in the boat with everybody else. I mean,
I remember that
personally,
Tucker Carlson thing. I covered that, and it truly was amazing. The games that they were playing with people in some of these really big gold houses that were there. So again, caveat emptor, buyer always beware. That is a really key issue. I've got some other. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I'm just going to say if you can get ripped off by not knowing what you're doing, and it's all legit. By the way, those things are legit. They're just selling collectible blue sky value over bullion over the price of spot. You want to get as close to the price of spot as you possibly can.
That's right. That was a technique that they did. Radis Bro, thank you for the tip. He says, I'm a firm believer that crypto is done, given the climate and the TCG cards like Pokemon are holding value because you can actually hold them and trade them like precious metals. People want to have something that is physical. And I think we're seeing a big move towards that as everything is becoming so virtual. That is something that I think really commands a premium, whether it's physical, whether it's a Pokemon card he's saying, or whether it's gold and silver. You don't want what we call the paper gold, which is GLD and SLV on the stock exchange. It's very easy to buy and sell that stuff, and the premium looks to be very cheap on that. However, if you look at it, it's not tracking the price of spot gold and spot silver, and there's a reason for that, because you don't own anything. You are now have shares in some organization that owns gold, but you don't directly own anything, and that is the trap that they're setting for people with everything that's on the stock market. I mean, they're even going to create a tokenized version of the stock market is coming up. It's just amazing how whenever they start creating these different multi-layers to get you further and further away from the actual thing, that should be a warning sign to you that your spider sense ought to start tingling.
Well, they've got a real generational problem, David. I mean, Gen Z doesn't own houses. They don't own stocks.
Mm-hmm.
These new generations, they don't have the wealth because of the currency issues, because of the economics of everything and the concentrations of wealth. And I mean, really the corruption of our financial system right now, it's built on fraud. You got fruit of a poisonous tree. So a lot of these younger people are giving up. And I think that, they can try to dress this up and put lipstick on a pig and tokenize stuff, but who wants a tokenized piece of something that's not worth anything? I mean, a lot of these companies are valued at 400 times earnings. And yeah, crypto's in a real weird place right now. Amazing technology. Some of it is garbage. Some of it's not. I don't know the use of it other than speculation or gambling. Especially the meme coins, which are absolutely ridiculous. If you want to see the outcropping of a failing civilization, look at some of these meme coins. I mean, it's just you can make short-term, I guess, money in it, but it's not something I really do. I look at fundamentals, and I'm in the business of gold, silver, and Bitcoin. I threw Bitcoin in there, and one of the reasons why is because it really is something unique in the crypto landscape, and the price on that's down right now. It's a lot of I think Mark Cuban just sold off his Bitcoin and said, well, the narrative hasn't held up. Well, I think you could say the same thing of, people are saying the same thing about gold. Well, gold didn't hold up. We're in a war. There's financial uncertainty. Why isn't my gold $6,000 an ounce? Well, I think we just covered a lot of that. There's multi-factors and energy and I think timeline. You got to look at the overall wealth, so-called, of the world, and where all the currency is and the value is. There's hundreds of trillions. And gold has a $20 trillion market cap. Okay, so there's not, I say this all, there's not enough real to house all the fake. You have to see where this is going to be, and start looking at 2 and 3 and 5 years out, not 2 months. I promise you, by the end of the year, we're going to have you and I will be talking. God willing, we're both here at the end of the year. I think we're going to have a much different conversation on the prices of precious metals and speculating on where we're headed next. It's going to be a different conversation because it's a rapid change.
Well, they brought in this guy whose family fortune is with Estee Lauder. They got to put makeup on this pig, and so he's obviously the guy to do that. Hatch Car 61, question for Tony: does he think the new for delivery silver contract in Singapore will have an impact on COMEX and the LBMA, the London, what is that, something metal exchange, LBMA?
Yeah, bullion exchange.
Bullion,
yeah. Yes. I think that it will, and I honestly think the other outlier there, you look at JP Morgan, I believe, they're moving their metals headquarters over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Or at least a big portion of it. The energy, look where the energy is flowing, and it's flowing towards places like China. Hong Kong is setting up the physical depository storage facilities. Physical, notice that word. That's in a post-trust financial world. Everything is going to physical.
That's right.
So they're going to have the physical storage houses. think the entire system is going to be upended. We floated for a long time, suppressing prices and using, financial instruments to paper over precious metals, and there would be some speculation in them. But I think at the end of the day, because gold is supplanting the dollar, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, there's going to be new storage facilities. There's going to be new ways of processing physical gold and silver. It's not just gold anymore. Silver is becoming a monetary metal for countries under the radar. Russia did that 2 years ago. I thought that was one of the biggest stories of our time. And China's stockpiling silver. So there's going to be a race for who holds the commodities, in my opinion. And
I agree.
The current system that we've built in the West, with the COMEX and these are unsustainable institutions in their current forms. There'll be a lot of changes.
And it's all about trust. And we can see that other countries don't trust the U.S. government, don't trust the Federal Reserve. Look at the efforts that they went through, the French government, the German government. The French were able to get their gold back. The Germans are still fighting to try to get it back. They can put Estee Lauder makeup on this pig, but these guys actually know her, and they are trying to get a divorce from her, regardless of how much lipstick they put on this pig with Kevin Warsh. We've got another comment here. Let's see. Militan Milankovic, thank you very much for the tip. He says, for the gas gauge, really appreciate the show. And the Walrus says, is there a visible gas gauge somewhere? Or do we just imagine the 3/4? No, there actually is. And we have that at the website, davidknight.news. And if you go there, you can not only see where the gas gauge is, you can see where you can stick stuff in the gas gauge. We've got links to different places where you can support us, as well as links to all the different places where the show is in both audio as well as audio and video. So that's an important place to remember, davidknight.news, and you can see all that stuff and interact right there at the website. And Gard Goldsmith, good to see you there. He says, the world-demanded product has to rise in price when the supply from alternate areas cannot be increased, even as one large source is shut down. And that's what the lesson that people in the Trump administration never learned from, never occurred to them that was there. And the people that are boasting about this, saying, look at this is great. We're getting we're going to corner the oil market. Well, the average American and the average MAGA voter isn't cornering the oil market. We're just going to feel the pain that is there, because we are participating in this global market for this scarce commodity. Scarce because of unnecessary government actions that they chose to make. Real Jason Barker, reminder that Tony has a show directly after this one. That's right. And people can find you on Twitter as well as Rumble. Is that correct? The Arterburn radio transmission?
Arterburn radio transmission on Rumble on the America Unplugged channel, and on my X account at Tony Arterburn. We'll be live there at 11 a.m. Central.
That's great. And let's see, there's not any more questions here for Tony, so I won't hold you any longer, Tony. I know you're very busy with all things, and I really do appreciate you coming on. It's always great to talk to you, and it's always great to get your very wise perspective on this. And I think you're right. I think we're going to be looking at this as this is a time where there's a buying opportunity, I think, just like when everybody wanted to go all crypto because of Trump talking. Well, it's Trump talk that is causing the value of gold to go down right now. And it's people who don't want to put any stock in what Trump is talking about. That's a good way to get had. And we have seen this proven to us over and over again, how this guy manipulates markets. Nobody has ever manipulated markets like Donald Trump has. And of course, gold is just one of those markets that he's manipulating. But the reality is the true value of this, and that is the physicality of it as well. And so we know that for millennia, gold and silver have been real money and real stores of value, and Donald Trump can't change that with all the lies and manipulations that he does, can he?
This is an insider trading administration. This is speculation and not for the benefit of the American people. I think the fundamentals are still there. Slow and steady wins the race. Steady as she goes. That's always a good phrase to hold when you're looking at I think we will be proven right in the long run. In the long run, and even in the short run, in the next 2 years, I think we'll have a different conversation. It's just, and there's so many factors right now. There's a lot of manipulation, a lot of psychological warfare. And shout out to Gar Goldsmith, the great Gar Goldsmith, for
Yes.
that basic economics lesson. You got to remind yourself of that sometimes. Is there what is the supply and what is the demand? At the end of the day, that nothing else really matters. Is there enough supply? Is there a dwindling supply of something? And there's not enough supply of real to go around to house all the fake. I know that, and this is going to be a different story very soon. But right now we're in the eye of it. We're in the thick of it, David. We'll do our best to try to figure out where we are.
That's right. Yeah, we got a lot of these market analysts and media people, as well as the people on Wall Street that are standing on the poop deck, soiling their pants. And we're trying to look out there to see what's happening in terms of manipulation. We see these whales. You can see the telltale signs of these whales and say, there she blows. And Trump is one of the biggest whales out there manipulating the market and everything else in reality. And so it's time to get back to reality. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and the dilemma that we're facing. Thank you so much for joining us, Tony. And again, if you go to davidknight.gold, that'll direct you to Tony Arterburns' Wise Wolf. Let him know that you came through us. And if you want to find out about our show, where you can find it, where you can support it, and what the level of support is, you can go to davidknight.news. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you coming on.
Sir.
Thanks, Tony. That was great. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Great
See you next
discussion.
week, sir.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Tell Alexa to add the APS radio skill and have access to the best channels anywhere. From country to blues, classic hits to news, APS Radio curates incredibly diverse playlists for you to enjoy. Get details at apsradio.com.
Well, again, how to make sure that AI doesn't spy on us or kill innocent people. Well, that's a great headline. That certainly got my attention. That's a Reason article, and they actually don't have a solution for that. I'm sorry to tell you that there isn't any way, really. What they do is they lay out in detail what the true dilemma is. And again, in this life, we're not going to find any easy solutions, especially when there is so much evil at the top. They point out that companies like Anthropic's a good example. The spat that they had with War Pete's Department of Death. I guess that's what we really should call it. If you go back to the old DOD, Department of Defense, we should really actually call it the Department of Death under Pete, because he wants to call it the Department of War. And those initials, by the way, are DOW, like the Dow Jones Industrial Avenue. So when we look at that, it's all about the money, right? And that really is what the military-industrial complex is about. So whether you're looking at the Dow or the DOD, you're talking about the Department of Making Money, the Dow, or you're talking about the Department of Death. That's what it's become under Pete's guidance here. And so you had this situation where Anthropic said, well, we have our own internal ethical rules of what we will allow AI to do. And he says, no, you don't. You're going to do what we tell you to do. And we don't have any ethical rules, right? We see what Pete Hegseth is doing in terms of killing people who are shipwrecked. People who are not combatants. That has been a long-standing, it's a very clear moral principle. I mean, you don't have to have a Pentagon rule. The Pentagon rules that are there are aligned with basic moral principles that he absolutely and totally rejects. This is why I have to say over and over again, Pete Hegseth does not represent Christ, and neither does James Tallarico on the left. Both of them are twisting the Christ teachings. They're twisting the Bible. They're twisting Christianity to support their political agenda. And it is disgusting to see how the two of them are doing this. Pentagon accused Anthropic, of course, of trying to undermine its sovereignty by saying, well, they've got their own policy preferences here, and our preferences are to kill people in the water. So we're going to come after them and call them a supply chain risk. This is the institution that shut down the Strait of Hormuz with their stupidity, and they call Anthropic a supply chain risk. They have thrown a monkey wrench into the global supply chain that is the biggest wrench that anybody's ever thrown in there. You want to talk about somebody that is a problem for the supply chain? It's the Pentagon under Trump.
And wasn't it things like not wanting to build something that could be used as an autonomous killing machine?
That's right.
That's somehow a supply chain risk.
Yeah.
These things aren't building weapons for us, so they are a risk.
That's right. We have to eliminate them as a company because as a company, they've decided they're not going to participate in creating a surveillance state. They're not going to participate in creating autonomous killing machines. And so that really tells you a lot about War Pete, about the Trump administration. So they've sued the Pentagon, and they've had some early victories. And there's also some negotiations that are going on. So we don't really know how that's going to work out. But that is something that tells us what the issues are at the heart of it. AI, folks, is a weapon. It is a weapon that is pointed at us. And as the CEO said, he said, I think we are entering a rite of passage. We have that is going to be both turbulent and inevitable, and it will test who we are as a species. Well, as Christians, one of my favorite hymns was always the lyrics. Actually, it began as a poem. It was a poem about 50 years before people put it to music. Once to every man and nation comes a moment to decide in the strife of truth or falsehood, for the good or evil side, some great cause, some great decision, offering each the bloom or blight, and the choice goes by forever twixt that darkness or that light. He's right. And so the question is, are we going to understand what the problem is? And if we understand it, are we going to point it out to other people? Collectively, we can do something about this, but even if it doesn't happen, individually, each and every one of us, if we are Christians, we have a foundation that we put our trust in. We have a foundation that causes us to not be afraid of this. There doesn't seem to be a wider recognition in society, he said, about what is about to happen. That is absolutely true. There's absolutely no recognition. When we look at this, people are reacting to these surface issues. Well, is AI going to take our jobs? Are robots going to take our jobs? And even if they can't do the job, will we all be fired by a CEO who thinks that they can do the job, whether they can do the job or not? You've got a lot of companies that have gone through a process of murder and suicide in terms of their employees that are there. And we were just talking about this last night. There's yet another company that decided that it could use AI to make pizzas. And this one was tied to Domino's, I think it was. But it was, these companies come up and you think that'd be a pretty easy thing to make. I mean, you have a pizza pie and you just put some sauce on it and throw on the toppings that you want and then put it in the oven. And yet there have been two companies that were set up for that very particular purpose. And one of them had tens of millions of dollars in capital. That's the one that just went under. The one before that had $500 million in capital that they had accumulated to create automated pizza. And so they were going to get rid of all the jobs there in the local store. There were people who were throwing together the pizza and delivering it, and just have one person in the store, if that, and I guess they could have one person that's there, and get rid of the rest of the entire crew. The reality is that both of these companies have gone bankrupt. So even some of these situations of replacing humans in something that you would think would be fairly straightforward and simple have gotten to be very complicated. There's a lot more complication to it than anything else. And so when you're talking about eliminating people involved in doing surveillance or people involved in fighting a war, these are critical, dangerous missions. And we have to be very, very careful about this. So the CEO of Anthropic, Amidai, calls for sensible AI regulation. Bernie Sanders, however, is calling for something that's a lot more dramatic. He wants to see the AI data centers absolutely stopped. And let me say this, we don't want to give power to people like Bernie Sanders and AOC because we take the wrong side on this issue. Conservatives are typically wired to reject all regulation. And I am too, as a libertarian. But we have to understand that what we're talking about here, ultimately in the dangerous areas, we're talking about what government is doing. And as a libertarian, I want regulation on government. I want restrictions on what government can do. That's what the Constitution is, especially the Bill of Rights. And so it is clear in the Bill of Rights they wanted to restrict what the government could do. It wasn't given a blank check to do everything. That's the power that they have usurped. But we want to have restrictions on what government can do. Because we know that what government wants to do, government wants to become God. And if we give them this tool that many of these people designing it are worshiping it as if it were God, if we give that kind of godlike power of omnipotence, of omniscience about everything that we're doing, and about omnipresence, if we give that kind of power to government, that is a recipe for global disaster that we've never seen before. So yes, we do want to have regulation, but we want to have regulation on the government, which doesn't want regulation. If you go to the government and you say, you protect us from this with regulations on private companies, that's going to be throwing fuel on the fire. Because then what they're going to do is they're going to use that to exclude anybody that might come up with any technology that might break this monopolistic power. Understand there are people out there who are, as we see with the crypto world, and they talk about this in this article. They have a quote from, I think his first name was Philip Zimmerman, the guy who did PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, back in the 90s, if you remember. And so, the people who came up with crypto and other things like that were doing it deliberately as a counteract to the government's ability to spy on us. Okay, well, you have the ability to spy on us, so we're going to give people tools to help to keep their privacy, to encrypt it. And that's one of the big lies, I think, about cryptocurrency. There is no anonymity. There is no encryption from your standpoint. The encryption is only on the blockchain. It has nothing to do with your privacy. So what was once seen as science fiction could soon become a reality, and that is super intelligent AI could become smarter than human beings, could become independent of human control, and could pose existential threat to the entire human race. And I say that's what Bernie Sanders is saying. I say no. I say it is government that could become omniscient. It is government that could become omnipotent. It's government that could become independent of control, where I see that happening. And it is government everywhere that could become an existential threat to all humans. And this is really where the dilemma is. Even if we were able to come up with some kind of a prohibition or control for our government, then our government could be controlled by another government that doesn't have those kinds of restrictions on it. I mean, this really is a Gordian knot to try to figure out what to do with this. Declaring a moratorium would give geopolitical rivals a dangerous advantage. So just because the technology has a dark side, they point out in Reason, there was a 19th century cartoon inveighing against electricity. It depicted the corpse of a Western Union lineman who had fallen into a tangle of wire and was smoldering for the better part of an hour. We haven't seen that happen too often, have we? But again, every technology has its good and its bad side. And so the question is, we can't, and maybe we shouldn't try to restrain the technology itself. What we have to do is restrain the way that it is used, especially the way that it is used by government. That is the key thing, I think. So if a government is going to use AI, what do we know that it's going to do? It's going to use it to spy on its citizens. It's going to use it to tax its citizens. It's going to use it to kill innocent people. That's what governments do. That's why we have the Bill of Rights. That's why it is so important. That's why it is so attacked by the government itself. NSA whistleblower.
Don't think this is a really apt comparison, comparing it to people complaining about electricity, because a lot of those were actually from Edison trying to discredit alternating current. That you need DC or this AC stuff is going to kill you.
That's right. Yeah, he did he staged a lot of things, like electrocuted an elephant and all these other
Actually,
things.
poisoned the elephant first, and then had some sparks and things to make it look like he was electrocuting it.
So they had mRNA vaccines back then. I'm gonna vaccinate the elephant with an mRNA vaccine for Ebola. There we go. No, it was the electricity who killed him. Ed Snowden was talking about computer privacy. He said he's been sounding the alarm about this kind of stuff for decades. He talks about the need to design technology that forces government restraint. So, in other words, we can try to, one approach would be to say, I don't want to have any of this technology. Let's see what we can do. Let's just cut the power to it. That's the Bernie Sanders approach. The Ed Snowden approach is, let's do the technology better, and we'll create technology that controls the technology that is out there. And I think that is a more promising approach. He said, you design against the worst possible case to avoid the inevitable. We know where this is leading. We also know that when we put in the Bill of Rights and all these restrictions in government, these people ignore all these things. So they have to be restricted somehow from the outside. Privacy activists cannot trust the government to implement the policies that it says that it is implementing. That's what Julian Assange said, and he's absolutely right. He said, so we must provide the underlying tools, the cryptographic tools that we control as a sort of use of force, as a countermeasure, really. So slowing AI down with regulation or handing control of it over to the government is dangerous and counterproductive. AI models must be programmed to behave ethically. So then how do we do that? And if we want to have it act as a human, act as humanely, they have to encode it at the deepest level with pro-human values. It's kind of interesting. You go back and look at the writings of Isaac Asimov. I read those when I was in junior high school. And when he talks about iRobot and his whole series of robot stories that he's got a guy who is a detective who goes and tries to figure out these crimes that have been committed by detectives. It's been a long time, so I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong. But the bottom line, and we've seen this, some elements of this reproduced in a lot of different entertainment that's out there. But his fundamental thing that he was talking about in terms of his positronic brain was that at the deepest level, they had embedded into it some rules that it must not harm a human. And even if that resulted in its own destruction. And so that was more fundamental than even preserving its own existence. It must not harm a human. And so he had several of these different rules that were there that it could not violate. And that played a big part in the story of the detective who was trying to figure out what had happened in these crimes. But that is basically what they're looking at here. Because we have Palantir, and their AI power tools allow the government to find patterns in the massive amounts of data it collects and to target individual movements. And I play that clip all the time about Alex Karp that somebody put together with AI. And again, that's another example. We can use AI to make our case. We can use AI to make very powerful statements about this stuff.
We still have that in the deck if you want to play it.
Yeah. No, I'm running short on time, so let me go through this. Anyway, it allows the military to capture supposedly the Venezuelan leader Maduro overseas. They tracked his movements. They use it to track ICE. Snowden says that time is really running out on us. And so we have to have something that is we have to have some kind of rules, fundamental rules that are going to be programmed into this. And so the question is, who's going to do that? Who do we have in Western civilization right now that has a moral foundation, that has any power? I can't think of anybody. This is going to be like the blind programming the blind. And so that is another aspect of the futility of all this stuff. As Snowden said, this is not a bullet that we're going to dodge. It's already been fired and it's heading toward us, and we have very little time to react. Said regulation isn't realistic because the technology is advancing too quickly. By the time they try to regulate it, it's already moved on to something else. It's not like, let's ban AI, or there's a limit on how many flops you're going to have in a data center. All the idiot stuff that we see in terms of AI regulation right now, he said. More broadly, we have to ask, what do people do? What recourse do they have when they have been ruled against by some AI system. And so you have to start looking. If you get down to the nitty-gritty details of this, those are changing so rapidly, you won't be able to do anything. You have to look at the bigger picture. He argued that humans should always be empowered to be able to override an AI system. And part of this is to raise awareness, which we try to do on this show, to raise awareness of the shortcomings of AI. If we get to the point where we defer to AI, we think that AI is honest and people aren't, that AI is objective and can be trusted, but the people can't, we're done. We're done. And we've already got that situation. We've already got people saying, well, we should have AI as the judge and jury in a trial. We should have AI as our elected officials because we just can't trust these corrupt humans. That is not the right response. You can't just have a black box where it goes, should John Doe be accepted for X, Y, and Z? And the person at the desk says, well, the computer says so, or says no. It says so or it says no. And there's no way that we can interrogate that. And we don't question what the computer says, yes or no. The black box problem is one reason why Anthropic drew a red line around autonomous weapons. They said they can't be relied upon to exercise the critical judgment that our highly trained professional troops exhibit every day, said the CEO Amadai. Videos from Ukraine of explosive drones stalking Russian soldiers show how terrifying it is being hunted down by a robot. And I imagine you've seen some of those. I've seen several of them. It truly is horrifying. It is very much like what we see in terms of Hollywood films, because there's another drone that is filming that from a higher angle. And if you put yourself in the place and knowing that this is a real video, this is somebody who's desperately trying to get away from this drone, and it just keeps honing in on him. And then the video goes blank. And, it's just blown him up. It's truly horrific. We don't want to have that future. Videos from Ukraine, where they're outsourcing the use of lethal force to an AI model that makes decisions for reasons we don't fully understand, is not acceptable. It's bad enough if these drones are under direct human control. Anthropic didn't say autonomous weapons are off the table, however, only that its models are not yet reliable enough. And therein lies the problem. Now, of course, Sam Altman at OpenAI has no moral qualms about any of this kind of stuff. It's just like, give me the contract. I don't really care. But even somebody who is genuine about this, assuming that the Anthropic CEO is genuine, he seems to be, I don't know. But even if you were serious about it, you could have a situation where maybe it does perform really well and does not make the wrong kill decision. Let me just ask you, have you ever had any software that worked one day and it didn't work the next? Have you ever had any software where that was not the case? I mean, there's going to be updates. There's going to be some situation you didn't anticipate, or there's going to be somebody who goes in and easily manipulates that. That is the reality of all this. The slaughter bots are coming. And this is said by the guy who is the one who wrote the first draft of the Trump administration's official AI policy agenda. That ought to scare you. The slaughter bots are coming, says the people writing the policy for the Trump administration. Well, they would know, wouldn't they? The Trump administration appears to be backing off after Anthropic reported that its new model, Mythos, is so powerful at exploiting security holes that it would work with the government to help to ward off cyber attacks. So they're putting this out there as like a Mythos, or offering that to them as a white hat hacker. We'll find the exploits and we'll let you know about them so you can fix them before somebody else exploits them. And so the bottom line is the currency that is understood by the Trump administration is power. That's what they understand. That's what they covet. And so they're willing to make a deal now with Anthropic. There are two ways to get Trump to back down, said Dean Ball, the guy that I talked about who said that slaughter bots are coming, the guy who wrote the first draft of the Trump regime's official AI policy. That said there's two ways to get Trump to back down. One is to flatter him. The other is to win. The Trump doctrine is
policy. His cabinet is just constantly trying to keep him from doing something crazy. They're constantly praising him.
That's right. Butter him up. That's right. The Trump doctrine is we don't fight people who we think can land a good punch back at us. We only punch down. Now, just take this at face value. What does this tell you about Trump? Is he not the quintessential bully when he does that? He's never going to fight on principle. He's only going to fight people who are weaker than him. And you need to flatter him. It's just amazing. It's no wonder that so many people have used him as a template for the villain in their movies, especially going Back to the Future. Biff was the template, or Trump was a template for Biff in that movie. A federal judge has ruled in Anthropic's favor, calling the Pentagon's actions Orwellian and a classic illegal First Amendment retaliation. And of course, Pete Hegseth is the classic First Amendment retaliation against reporters in the Pentagon. And everything the man does is Orwellian. So why wouldn't it be that way? The government has learned a lesson that we can't actually screw with these people in the way that we thought we could, said Dean Ball. So the Trump administration seems to be acknowledging that it needs Anthropic on its side. Anthropic sees the opportunity to ink its own deal with the Department of Defense, even after OpenAI co-founder and CEO Sam Altman expressed solidarity with Anthropic's red lines. Yeah, this guy is such a sleazebag. He'll go out there and say, yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're doing, and then he will try to undermine you, stabbing you behind your back. A recent profile in the New Yorker asked, can Sam Altman be trusted? That, of course, is a rhetorical question, which we already know the answer to. They quoted a number of his professional acquaintances who disparaged him as someone who was unconstrained by truth, who just tells people what they want to hear. He offered a lot of assurances that prohibitions on domestic mass surveillance and autonomous weapons remained in place, but OpenAI's contract grants the Pentagon leeway to use this technology for all lawful purposes, and it only prohibits use of autonomous weapons or mass surveillance when, quote, law, regulation, or department policy requires human control. In other words, if the Pentagon says it's legal, it's legal. It's not a crime if the president does it. That's going back to Richard Nixon, right? Whether Altman is personally trustworthy or not, the answer to the questions posed by the New Yorker headline is resounding no. We cannot trust any individual, any tech company, or any government institution to safeguard our liberties for us indefinitely. That applies to Altman, to Amidei, to Musk, to Pete Hegseth, or to the Department of Defense. Snowden says we need to have computer systems that cannot violate our rights. So he champions products that use end-to-end encryption like Signal or have distributed open source software like Bitcoin, systems designed to be less susceptible to abuse by fallible humans. And of course, I know many of you are thinking, yeah, but Bitcoin is a pump and dump thing from the very beginning. Well, it all gets to what they talk about, the alignment problem. How do we get these things to align with our interests? And as they point out, a philosopher, Nick Bostrom, described this in a 2014 book that he wrote about it called Superintelligence. And it's kind of interesting. I remember a theologian I was listening to one time, he said, when the scientists get to the top of the mountain, what they're going to find is the philosopher who's been waiting for them. And that's what we have right now. You've got some of these AI companies who are trying to actually hire philosophers to try to come up with a moral code, which begs the question, whose moral code are we going to use with this? And what are the values that are going to be there? And we have some very disturbing answers to that when we look at what the people who are developing these systems are actually like. And we just had an expose come out by a woman who was invited at the beginning of this to come into OpenAI, and this was in the days before they had ChatGPT. She talks about the idiosyncrasies and essentially the religious cultic-like behavior. And I mean, having these Bohemian Grove type of events where they're burning stuff in effigy, literally wearing robes and stuff. You want to think about that for a little bit, and you start to see the dark undercurrents of this and the fact that they are on a mission, also a religious mission, to create a superintelligence that they think is really going to be like God. I mean, even Hugo de Garis that I talked to, he said, yeah, we are creating a God-like intelligence. The question is it going to be benevolent or is it going to be malicious? And so you have people like Ray Kurzweil who will tell you right away, he's a hardcore optimist with this. Oh, it'll be benevolent. Ray has that bias in him. Hugo took the opposite approach. He thinks that it's going to be malevolent. Well, this
And,
book,
you know, they've got these very sketchy people trying to come up with these moral restrictions for it. But like you said, when you think about who these people are, an AI programmed like them by them would probably, tell people just what they want to hear, unconstrained by the truth.
That's
that
right.
kind of sounds like the AIs we've got right now.
yeah, I think you're going to have somebody like Sam Altman. And by the way, when I look at Sam Altman, what this guy reminds me of is of the guy, remember the character Burke in Aliens, the guy who was always trying to find a way to get the alien inside of somebody so he could smuggle it back and make a lot of money selling it to the military industrial complex. Remember that?
Bishop, I want these specimens destroyed as soon as you're finished with them. Is that clear?
Mr. Burke gave instructions that they were to be kept alive in stasis for return to the company labs. He was very specific about it.
Look, those 2 specimens are worth millions to the bioweapons division, right? Now, if you're smart, we can both come out of as heroes, and we will be set up for life.
I say we grease this rat fuck son of a bitch right now.
Just doesn't make any goddamn sense.
He figured that he could get an alien back through quarantine if one of us was impregnated, whatever you call it, and then frozen for the trip home. Nobody would know about the embryos we were carrying. Me and Newt.
Wait a minute now, we don't know.
Yes, the only way he could do it is if he sabotaged certain freezers on the way home. Namely yours. Then he could jettison the bodies and make up any story he liked.
He's dead. You're dog meat, pal.
This is so nuts. I mean, listen to what you're saying. It's paranoid delusion. It's really
That's what they
sad.
always say, isn't it?
It's pathetic.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
All right, we waste him. No offense.
No! Gotta go back!
Well, yeah, I didn't duck down that audio level quite enough. But anyway, you get the idea there. And that's, yeah, Paul Reiser actually even looks a little bit like Sam Altman, doesn't he? So what do we do with this guy? Well, the analogy, the parable that he used was, he said, let's imagine that you got a group of sparrows. They decide to steal an owl's egg so they can raise a bigger, more powerful bird to help build their nest. One sparrow suggested they might want to learn and test techniques to domesticate an owl first. So some birds go in search of an owl's egg, while a few stay behind trying to figure out how to control the owl before it's too late. Actually, we don't have anybody in the AI business who is interested in learning how to train the owl. They're only going out there collecting owl's eggs, which is going to work out about the same as if you were to bring back the aliens impregnated in somebody. At a certain point, AI is going to become what's called recursively self-improving. It's going to figure out how to modify itself in a way that cannot necessarily be controlled by humans. So this guy, they talked to Rosenblatt. He's the founder of AE Studios, a consulting firm that helps companies incorporate AI. Rosenblatt said, having kids make me think, well, I'd like for my kids to grow up. I'd like for them to have a thriving, surviving life and to be able to continue to exist. Yeah, that's what seems to be always missing, isn't it? Well, is it possible that the owl will turn on us sparrows? Alignment is the original impetus for starting Anthropic. Amadei and his co-founders left OpenAI because they were worried that Altman had given up on model alignment, or rather that he was procuring owl's eggs without learning how to control the bird after it hatched. The Trump administration has also deprioritized so-called AI safety. Listen to what J.D. Vance said. If you think that Burke was bad, J.D. Vance says, and he said this at the Paris AI Action Summit in February of 2025, he said, I'm not here this morning to talk about AI safety. I'm here to talk about AI opportunity. J.D. Vance is that guy in the movie, Burke. That's exactly. I'm not here to talk about safety. I'm here to talk about opportunity. Think about all the money we could make with this thing. I don't know what I'm about to unleash on people or how we're going to use it. Just think about the money that we could make with this. So some people agree with Sanders and think that the most rational, ethical step is to pause AI development. Eliezer Rudkowski is one person that's a group they call themselves effective altruists. And again, I guess the term Luddite is already taken, but
Effective Altruists was the group that Sam Bankman-Fried was the face of. He was,
that's right.
out there preaching about how everyone needs to be moral like him.
Yeah, they have a real big PR problem now because of their association with Sam Bankman-Fried, and but they had done some things in the past that were good. They point that out in Reason. They had gone on a campaign prior to that where they were collecting money and giving people in a lot of these areas mosquito netting because mosquitoes kill more humans than any other animal that's out there. So they gave people mosquito netting, but then they started doing some Sam Altman fried stuff. And so now the effective altruist is a pejorative term when you use that to people. It's a despised label, but not for people like Bernie Sanders. Eliezer Yudkowsky gave a TED Talk in 2023. He said an international coalition banning large AI training runs, including extreme and extraordinary measures, should be willing to risk a shooting conflict between nations in order to destroy an unmonitored data center in a non-signatory country. I say this expecting that we all just die. So in other words, we need to, if necessary, we got to go on suicide mission attacks. I mean, this is the Sarah Connors approach, if necessary. He is supportive of Sanders' proposal to declare a moratorium on the construction of AI data centers. The Trump administration, of course, takes the opposite view. They say, this is just a bunch of Democrats and allies of Bernie Sanders and George Soros. They reply with a tribalistic approach and a reproach, I guess, calling it a doomer cult. They say there's some very specific ideological and political agendas here. They want AI to be highly regulated, not just at the level of the nation state, but also internationally and supranationally. And when you look at this is perhaps what Elon Musk was talking about when he said, if you regulate, I don't know if it was Musk or if it was Peter Thiel, saying that if you regulate AI, that's going to usher in the Antichrist. And what he was saying essentially, I think, was if you create some kind of global government to stop any AI development, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have to go in and have military strikes on places where somebody's got a data center. And if you do that, you're going to be creating the very monster that you tried to stop. See, this is the dilemma that we've got here. We have government that is getting and developing this incredibly powerful tool. And so what do? Do we get government to stop put in some guidelines for this tool? They're not going to do that. I mean, they're creating this for the very purpose of spying on us, of auditing us, of automating killing machines. That's the very purpose of this. It's not ultimately, it is bad in terms of the jobs that it takes, in terms of what it can do to us, taking our jobs and putting us on universal basic income. That's bad enough. But the Big Brother combined with Terminator, that's the bigger issue. And you can't trust a government to do that. And because you've got all governments are wired to do that by the nature of the people that control them, then you wind up having to create a global government that is also not going to be a check on this kind of power. That is truly the issue in front of us. And so the people in the Trump administration are not even looking at it from the right perspective to have any input on this. And so they're talking about, it works better. As a matter of fact, they made the point that when they started out with artificial intelligence, it was first focused on very narrow problems. They would go in and say, let's figure out if there's a way that we can address this particular health issue or something. Can we apply artificial intelligence to that specific problem and do something about that? They said what happened was they started doing reinforcement learning as part of an alignment thing. And it was originally an alignment technique to get AI to be more aligned with what a human wants it to do. When they applied it and created a chatbot, that was when everything started to take off with these large language models. And so what they're saying is that if you actually work on the alignment problem, it is a win-win for both the people as well as the AI companies. But you see, the problem is you're going to have people like Pete Hegseth, people like Sam Altman, who are going to be training this. Do you really want a machine that is aligned with their values? Yeah, that's the real dilemma that is there. And, you know, when you go back to that poem, it said, you know, once in every man and nation comes a moment to decide. And the real issue comes down. It's not too much we can do in terms of changing the nation. We can change it one person at a time. And that change begins with us. And that change begins with recognizing who God is. And God is not being created in Silicon Valley. Thank you for joining us. And make sure that you check out the interviews that we got tomorrow. I think you're going to find some really good interviews, especially on the health front. We have, as I pointed out, we're going to have a discussion about ivermectin. We're going to go back and look at the history of some of the things that happened in 2020 with another interview. And I interview a person who has a clinic, and they have a success rate in terms of addressing stage 4 cancer that is anywhere from 2, depending on the type of cancer, 2 times better success rate than the average U.S. clinic, 3 times on some types of cancer, and 1 type of cancer 12 times better than the average U.S. thing. So it's something you need to check out. We talk about some of the new things that have been mentioned, like ivermectin and some of these other things. What are the safety protocols on that? How do you combine some of these new approaches to things that we've known all along, as well as to lifestyle and other issues? It is a holistic approach. So don't miss that program tomorrow. Thank you for joining us today. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.
You're listening to The David Knight Show. In a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. You're listening to The David Knight Show. You're listening to The David Knight Show. Decoding the mainstream propaganda.